Hello, and welcome to another marvelous episode of 3 Levels Deep. I'm Matt, and today I am joined by Santo.
Salutations.
And we've got some stuff we've been playing to talk about. A little bit of news. I've got some delayed news on Street Fighter 6. It's been a while since we last recorded.
Yeah.
But I mean, the release is right around the corner, so why not talk about it? Yeah, there's actually something that's not a game that we both saw.
That's right.
Maybe we should just talk about this quick.
Yeah, so we saw the Mario movie
Yep.
a few weeks ago. And I liked it a little bit more than I thought I was going to. I went into it pretty jaded.
Yeah, it's an inoffensive kids movie.
Pretty much, yeah. The animation was really good in it.
Oh yeah,
I liked
beautiful.
I liked all the little references they had in the background, especially in like the quote unquote real world.
Yeah,
there was a ton of little like old NES references and stuff like that. That was kind of nice to look for.
Yeah, like obviously you're gonna have a lot of references in a movie like this. Like some that you might not even pick up on a first watch. You got to pay close attention to on a repeat viewing. But yeah, no, it was a fun kids movie. I think you and I had one thing we weren't really a fan of, and that was the licensed soundtrack.
It just felt a little out. Some of their song choices felt kind of out of place.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever. I mean,
yeah,
it couldn't hold a candle to the original soundtrack, like when Bowser was on the piano.
Yep.
Obviously, he had to get a song in there.
Yeah, you get Jack Black in there, you got to get him to do a song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like there was probably no plans for a song until Jack Black was cast as Bowser there.
Maybe. He did a pretty good job. Of the voice actors that they got, he was probably the best one.
Yeah. Like Chris Pratt, not as bad as I was expecting. Like very, very early in the movie, you realize what they're going for.
Yeah.
Like they get out of the way real early in the movie, and then it's like, okay, no, this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course you have Charles Martinet doing a bunch of cameos.
Yeah, still salty that he wasn't just.
It wasn't just Mario. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. No, there's a reason it blew up in the box office.
Yeah, I didn't even look at how much it made.
Oh, where is it up to now? As of now, it's made $552.6 million in the U.S. and Canada, and $713.8 million in other territories. Worldwide total $1.26 billion.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So there's definitely going to be a sequel.
Yeah.
They might not have said anything yet, but yeah, there's no way they're not going to cash in on that further.
All right. I cannot wait for Waluigi on the big screen.
Oh, who's going to voice him though?
Charles Martinet. Like, okay, you know what? See, they need like celebrity like name recognition for all these, big Mario characters. But for Waluigi, just get Charles to do it.
Yeah, just get him in there.
Yeah, so that's not the only big Nintendo thing that has happened in the last month. You've gotten your hands on Tears of the Kingdom.
I've been putting a lot of time into that. In fact, while I talk about it, I'm just slowly going to check my Switch to see just how many hours I'm at exactly, because I don't even know.
Hopefully it'll tell you. I've noticed when I've wanted to check playtime on the Switch itself, for games that I've started recently, it won't actually tell me the hour count, which is a bit odd.
So for me right now, it says 80 hours or more.
Jeez.
I don't even feel like it's been 80 hours, but yeah, I guess it has been.
Yeah, I've got a similar thing with another game that I'll talk about later, where it's just like, oh god, I put that much time into this? That can't be right.
uh, but yeah, no, this game is huge, and a lot of people have said it, but by comparison, Breath of the Wild is a tech demo.
Sure.
It just takes everything of Breath of the Wild and just expands on it so much. You get it scraps the abilities you had in the first game, but replaces them with an even better set of abilities. And not only like all the trailers focused on more so the islands in the sky.
Yeah.
Like everything we saw before launch, it just focused on those. And I kind of thought leading up, oh, well, maybe we'll get a little bit of underground as well, because, I mean, you get these islands lifting up out of the ground, could open some caverns in the ground. Yeah, no, you get an underground that spans the entirety of the map.
Jeez.
It's huge. So they effectively more than doubled the size of the game. And not only that, but I gotta wonder if they saw Elden Ring's success, and because Elden Ring has all these like little mini dungeons and caves like all over the map, all over the surface map, there's all these little caves you can explore. Also, apparently, the game was ready to go a year ago.
Okay.
They spent a year on polishing the physics, apparently.
And
it definitely shows.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, you need some pretty good physics when players are building the shit they're building.
Yep. I mean, the banjo nuts and bolts comparisons have been made already. I'm just gonna make it again. Like, it's ridiculous. It's so strange to me that this is the direction that they went in.
I like it, but even then, I haven't built anything crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I've just made simple traversal vehicles. That's about it. Nothing. I haven't made any Geneva Convention breaking torture chambers or suborbital weapons platforms that other people have been making. It's ridiculous. You give people a tool like this, and you can see how creative people can get with what they're given.
Yeah, just like, it's, from what I've seen of the game, because of just like the nature of what people are going to be posting from this game, it doesn't look like a Zelda game at all.
No,
it's just like everything everybody's posting are just these insane contraptions that they're using to do really stupid things.
Yeah, no, it's definitely its own. Like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, they're their own Zelda, like, because like, there's nothing wrong with like a game changing up its style every now and then, but I wouldn't mind at some point if we went back to a more traditional Zelda experience.
I think if that's gonna happen, they might do it in 2D.
Yeah,
like
probably.
like a Link Between Worlds kind of situation.
Because I feel like it's kind of hard to follow up this in terms of a big 3D Zelda when you've given players so much creative control.
Yeah, like I'm not entirely sure what they would do from here in terms of big 3D Zelda games. Like if it's now like, okay, Zelda's an open world game, deal with it. Like going forward or not. Like I don't know. I don't know what they do.
And actually, speaking of the open world, it's much better than Breath of the Wild's. It feels more alive. That was one big problem with Breath of the Wild, is it felt pretty empty. Tears of the Kingdom actually feels a lot more alive. You run into like NPCs more often, more groups of enemies. There's more like mini boss enemies scattered throughout, like including like new types. Like every enemy, I think like almost every enemy type, except for the Guardian enemy types from Breath of the Wild are still present, but they're replaced by stuff that there is an enemy type that is the most horrifying non-horror game enemy I have ever encountered.
I mean, Zelda's got a good track record with that. I, couldn't play Ocarina of Time as soon as Redeads got involved.
Yeah, no, it took me a while before I was able to go through the Forest Temple, like the first one you get to go to as adult Link, because the atmosphere of that and like the song that played just freaked me out as a kid. But yeah, this enemy type, it's horrifying. I've only defeated one because I had to. But it's basically just this pile of like blackish reddish goo called it's actually, you can actually see just normal piles of this stuff throughout the game. It's called gloom, and basically if you stand in it, you actually it depletes your max total health. Until you get like back to the surface, or use I think there's an item that you can use to kind of just restore those hearts, but it'll actually deplete your total health. And it's a monster that's made up of this stuff that's just it's a puddle on the ground with like 4 or 5 just like arms coming out of it, each with like an eye in its palm. It's faster than you. They grab you, drain your health. It's terrifying. And anytime I see one, I just start running.
Yeah, now that I think about it, actually, Zelda's had a few just like absolutely terrifying enemies. Like,
oh yeah,
like the Wall Masters in the Forest Temple, or the likes in Link's Awakening that eat you and eat your shield.
Actually, this is for the first time in a while. Likes are actually back. Actually, is this? No, likes were in Ocarina. This might be the first time in a while.
They were a lot easier in Ocarina.
Yeah, this is the first time in a while they've been in a 3D Zelda game, I want to say. Yeah, this game, it's just it's so big. There's so much you can do. And actually, dungeons are there's actually dungeons, which is something that I felt was missing from Breath of the Wild. It had the divine beasts, which were kind of the dungeon substitute, but I don't know, I didn't really care. I mean, they were okay, but like they made me miss dungeons. And even then, in Tears of the Kingdom, the dungeons are pretty dumbed down for a Zelda dungeon, but I think I still like them better than the divine beasts.
Okay.
But the game's it's more about the open world and everything. So, yeah, the dungeons are pretty short, but I think I've done 3 out of 4 of them so far.
4? That's such a wrong number.
Yeah. I've done 3 out of 4 of them, and I'm like over 80 hours of game time. just I mean, like one of the first things I try to do is uncover the overworld map. So I just go to all your Ubisoft sync towers.
Yeah.
And then like I recently got so sidetracked by just completely uncovering the map of the depths. And like I've noticed I'm at a point now where as you progress, there's like a hidden level kind of thing. Where I think it's based on how many monsters you've defeated.
Okay.
And so the more you defeat, the more powerful variants of them start popping up. So I'm at a point where I'm starting to see a lot more of the powerful variants, which comes in handy because something else I haven't talked about yet is the weapon fusing.
Right.
And monsters drop good parts for that, and the more powerful they are, the more powerful the part is. And like there's just some it doesn't get as crazy as I was hoping. You can only attach one thing to another. You can't like attach multiple things. But it does the job, and I even found something which probably my favorite thing to fuse in. If I fuse it to a weapon, it starts life drain on enemies, and I start healing off of the damage I do.
Nice.
The game's so massive, so many tools to work with, and like so your starting tools you get the Ultra Hand, which is the tool you use for combining objects together, or also just like moving around, picking up and moving around any of the physics objects, which is basically the replacement of Magnesis from Breath of the Wild, which it's just better in every way, because all you could do with Magnesis was move metallic objects.
Mm-hmm.
This just allows you to pick up any physics objects and combine them. And then you've got Fuse, which is to fuse weapons together or fuse stuff to your shield. Like you can... My favorite thing to have on reserve is just a rocket fused to my shield. So if I find myself in an undesirable situation, I just switch to that shield quick, and then I just blast up and out of there.
Oh man, that's a pro strat right there.
But yeah, you can strap like a bunch of stuff to the shield. Like I think if you strap it in kind of rock, you can then just kind of start bashing stuff with it. Or like use it to like bash the like little ore deposits that you would use to just gather some resources. I've also seen, I haven't tried it myself, but I've seen explosives strapped to it, so an enemy hits it and then they just explode. Actually, that's something I saw that I don't think the person thought through. I saw a clip of someone attaching an explosive barrel to a boomerang.
Oh no.
And they missed their target, and then they missed the catch prompt.
Oh boy.
Yeah, like even with the limitation of only being able to fuse two items together, you can still do some pretty crazy stuff. And honestly, it kind of, even though there's still durability, which was a problem for me in Breath of the Wild, this pretty much solves any problems I had with durability, because it just allows you to be creative and just see, oh, what can I make with what I got?
Mm-hmm. That's cool, man.
So for other abilities, you've also got Ascend, which basically, apparently this started out as a dev tool that they just ended up putting in.
Oh, that's the best.
So if there's a platform above you with a certain height, you'll just shoot up through the platform, and you'll just ascend to the whatever the surface is of that object at the very top. And the last ability is Rewind, mm-hmm. which basically allows you to rewind any physics object.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, like an early example they use is there's like this big metal spiky ball that's like rolling down a hill at you in the trailer, and they just use Rewind, and it just goes back up. And like there's some enemies running after it to get you in case it misses, and then it just hits them on the way back up.
Nice.
But you can also you can if you need to be at an elevation or something, you can just take an object that you'd be able to ascend through, and you can just use Ultra Hand to just hold it up in the air. Just hold it in the air for like 15 seconds or so. Let go of it, it'll fall back down. Use Rewind so that it'll just shoot up there, and it'll just stay up there for 15 seconds before it comes back down as it's rewinding. And then you could just ascend through it and just get some height.
Yeah, so that's that's an interesting way to traverse the world.
Yeah, it's definitely not lacking in traversal methods. My go-to, it's a very simple contraption that pretty much everyone's using. It's just two fans attached to a steering column, one at the front, one at the back, each at like a 45-degree angle. And you just get a little hover bike out of it. Of course, these contraptions you create they're limited by how much battery capacity you have. Mm-hmm. Now, there are battery objects you can attach to them to power them, but you've also got this little battery pack thing on your Link's belt. So that's where you want to farm the depths for that, because there's ore deposits down there which you use to increase your battery capacity, and then obviously increasing your battery capacity makes these contraptions run longer and just more useful. I guess one last thing I want to say is those floating islands, they sure did the obvious thing in making you think there's some kind of connection to Skyward Sword here. There's not.
Yeah.
It's its own thing. Like, the floating islands have no connection to Skyward Sword, so it's just its own. It's its own thing.
Probably for the best.
Yeah. But yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, I'm not going to really talk about the story, but I've been enjoying what little bit of it is. It kind of does the same thing where the main story, because in Breath of the Wild there would be these certain spots that you would have pictures of, and you needed to locate them.
Right. And
if you located them, Link would regain some of his memories, because he starts without any memories because he's been in the Shrine of Resurrection for 100 years.
Another video game protagonist struck by amnesia. When will it end?
But in this case, you're gathering memories that fill you in on the story. And like there's a good reason for them kind of just being scattered and having to find them, which I'm not really going to talk about.
Okay.
But I guess the other thing I want to talk about, which I touched on a little bit last time, but now that I finished it, is Resident Evil 4 Remake.
Right. How did it find you?
Fantastic. Yeah, it's like I still haven't played the original, but like just on even without that, like just great game. But like I've heard from fans of the original that this is also a fantastic game. They're both worthy of existing. But yeah, to touch on some things for Remake, there's no QTEs.
Wow.
But you kind of get a replacement for QTEs in that the knife has a parry mechanic now.
There we go. Okay.
So yeah,
QTEs
you can parry
without the prompt.
Yep. And to kind of balance this out, the knife actually has durability.
Okay.
So you have to repair it at the merchant, or there are more inferior knives, like just kitchen knives that you can pick up, and those don't last as long. But obviously because of this, the first thing you're upgrading on the knife, the first thing anyone's upgrading on the knife, I'm pretty sure, is the durability.
Yeah. Nobody likes weapon durability.
Especially when you can parry with it, and it becomes very handy.
Yeah.
So the merchant's shooting range has been revamped, and so it rewards you with tokens for a gotcha machine.
Okay, great.
And the rewards you get from the gotcha machine are little keychain, or like little charms that you attach to the attaché case. But these charms, they use the models of the characters from the original RE4.
Oh wow.
And they have different effects. I think I have the Ashley charm, which actually makes just a green herb on its own, without combining it with anything, heal 50% more. I also have the Ada charm, which makes body armor repairs cost 30% less.
Okay, so you're just going survivability.
Yeah, those are the big ones I've been rolling with. Another feature it added, which for me is, I have not used this feature at all because I find it to be kind of pointless. I can see how some people would want to use it because it does kind of take up time. But they added an auto sort to the attaché case.
Oh.
I did manual sorting the whole game. I'm not using that auto sort. The game also has a more serious tone than the original. Because in the original, you'd get Leon dropping one-liners like all over the place.
Oh, really?
There's still some one-liners here and there, but I think most of them have been relegated to the names of achievements or in-game challenges. So yeah, it's a more serious tone, and it deals more with well, not really, it doesn't really deal with it too much, but like you can see here that Leon's definitely dealing with survivor's guilt after the events of Raccoon City. So they actually make they flesh out the characters a little more with this. And as for Ashley, I mean, some people have still had, like, the big problem with Ashley from the original, to my understanding, is people did not like her AI.
Right.
Some people have still had problems with her AI in 4 Remake. I didn't really have any. So I didn't have any real issue with her, and to my understanding, they also made her into a much better character as well. And probably my favorite thing about RE4 Remake is how they date the game. Yeah. By just having a pink Motorola Razr interactable object you can find.
Nice.
Just to remind you, this game takes place in 2004. A
simpler time. Yeah, that's something that's a little funny to me, is that for how much everybody maligns escort missions, to have RE4 be like a really large escort mission, kind of, and also be considered one of the greatest games of all time. It's like, what's going on here? Why is it so good? Like, why do people love this game so much, but, you know, generally not like those kind of missions in other games? What does this game do differently than other games in that respect?
Oh, and actually one thing that I kind of got wrong last time I was talking about it. So in the original, Ashley has health. She has her own health. But in Remake, she does still kind of have health, but it's more so she gets hit once, she goes down, she gets hit again, it's game over. Right. Or if she gets picked up and carried far enough away from Leon, also game over. Mm-hmm. But there were a couple, there was one, there's only really one instance I can think of where I had a bit of trouble, and it's mostly because there was a gap between us that, like, I couldn't get across. And a bunch of enemies, so it's kind of like, yeah, I had a bit of trouble there, but yeah, nothing that, like, aggravated me about her AI or anything like that, so. But yeah, no, fantastic. I'm looking forward to playing 4 Original at some point. That way I can make my own comparisons between the two.
Cool.
And then, so aside from that, I guess there's only really one other thing I've been playing, and it's actually up on the channel.
Yes.
I've been playing Cursed Halo again, a mod by Inferno Plus. Now this is an enhanced version of the original mod from 2019. But this one actually comes with Steam Workshop support, so you can just easily install it if you have Master Chief Collection on Steam.
Oh wow, okay.
Cool. All you have to do is boot up the game with the anti-cheat disabled, so you can run the mod. And that has been a wild ride.
Yeah, especially the latest episode that went on. That was a very well ride indeed.
It's also gotten kind of cursed on a recording side of things.
Yeah, not one but 2 different.
I had
recordings.
Yep, the first time I recorded 343 Guilty Spark, I got to the end and realized I forgot to hit record. So I went back and re-recorded that along with the next level. And then yesterday I went to record. I played 2 more levels because I've only got 3 levels left to go through. So I recorded 2 of those last 3, and no game audio in the recording.
Yeah, that's rough, man. Like,
So I was trying to do 2 episodes a week, but I might just take a break for a couple weeks here because after that mishap, I was just like, uh,
yeah, it's so frustrating to lose a recording. The, if anybody's been following the channel, you've noticed that our XCOM Chimera Squad Let's Play is kind of on hold. That's because we recorded for 3.5 hours and lost that recording. So me and Alex were quite unhappy about that, and then had personal busy issues. So we'll
yeah,
get back to that eventually, I'm sure. But yeah, that sucks.
yeah. I'll try to make it a short break and get back with a Cursed Halo though. Just since it is just a solo Let's Play, it's a lot easier to just kind of record when I can. But
Yeah,
having to replay those 2 levels, it's kind of just like, even though I'm only playing on normal, it's just like,
yeah. Like even on normal, like just the nature of that game is far more difficult than normal.
yeah, oh yeah. But honestly, I don't even think it was a very good recording anyways. I had just come back from the dentist,
Oh dear.
so my
Okay.
jaw was a little sore. But yeah, Cursed Halo will return again.
Again and again and again. Nice. All right. So I have been playing 2 games pretty much for the last since we last recorded. The first being I've continued playing Line Monster Farm, which is the Japanese only Monster Rancher mobile game. So that game is kind of like a roguelike. If you
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I mean,
That's
it's a stretched definition of roguelike,
yeah,
but everything's using the stretched definition of roguelike, so whatever.
yeah,
Because like
it,
you're basically doing runs with these monsters, going through this same like route basically, where all these different tournaments on these different weeks. You've got like 40 or so weeks from the start of the run to the end of the run until you fight like the end boss. And there's randomness in what enemies you fight during these tournaments. And the focus of the game is, just like taking monsters on runs, seeing how well you do, and then, either doing just the same monster on the run again to see if you can do better, or switching up with different monsters. So it's a bit of a interesting structure that for what the game's based on, Monster Rancher, it actually does make a lot of sense.
yeah.
And I've been enjoying it mostly. The RNG's starting to grate on me a little bit because there are some, like obviously, different enemies that you fight. There's going to be different matchups, kind of stuff where, I've got a very speedy monster, but I got matched up against a monster with really good accuracy, so my greatest strength isn't going to help me here. I'm probably just going to get rolled. But there's a couple monsters that have way too much speed for the time in which you fight them during the run, and it's all the attacks, whether they hit or not, is just like, a percentage chance based on your accuracy versus their speed. So like I had a run that was going really, really well up until I came across an enemy that had a maxed out speed stat. So my most accurate attack was like 23% chance to hit.
Oh,
And it's just like, no.
yeah, that seems a little unbalanced.
Yeah, and I had like kind of average accuracy by that point. I wasn't specializing it, but I wasn't neglecting it either. So it was just like, well, that kind of sucks. You do get 3 retries for tournaments throughout the run. But at that point, I'd already used all my retries, so I just kind of had to deal with it. I was like, damn it. And the retries are also against the same opponent, so you can't just reroll and get a new opponent, which can be kind of frustrating. So
yeah,
it takes a lot of luck to get like the perfect run. I haven't gotten one yet, but it's interesting enough to keep playing, and I've been getting fairly lucky with the gacha stuff. I've been getting a lot of good monsters that I like, which is nice. I do feel like the game isn't very generous, though. Like, some mobile games are far more generous than others with the gacha stuff, where this one doesn't dole out a lot of resources for getting new monsters very quickly. So it's a bit of a frustration there. But one thing that I will say that is sort of nice about the game is that the monsters you get them between like 1 and 3 stars, and they can go up to a maximum of 5 stars, and any monster can make it to a maximum of 5 stars. So even the lower rarity monsters can, in theory, get up to the same power level as like the highest rarity of monsters. Because you can upgrade them. There's a couple things mechanics I won't go into that makes that not actually true, but it's still nice to see that. Like, one of my favorite monsters in any of the Monster Ranch games is unfortunately like a 1-star monster in this. So they're not very good, but if I put in a ton of resources into them, they can be like really good, because like the star rating determines what their starting stats are, and a couple of abilities that they're able to get.
So do your monsters in this still have a lifespan?
So that's like the 40 like week thing that I said, where you get like 40 like time units of time during a run. Your monsters don't die at the end of that. They become when you start a run, you're basically selecting a template, kind of, where the monsters that you summon, you can use once you summon a monster, you can use that monster as many runs as you want.
Okay. And
then the monsters from previous runs that you've created, you use 2 of them to like infuse your new monster that you're starting to raise with like stats and abilities. So like part of the game is trying to raise like really good parent monsters so that you can make even stronger child monsters to have a head start on the runs. So that's kind of nice, I suppose. And like, I've got a pretty good set of monsters at this point, but I've run the numbers a little bit, and I've gotten lucky in getting a lot of like the base 3-star monsters or whatever. So I'm not entirely sure if it's going to keep its momentum up, if I'm going to be playing this for like too much longer. We'll see, because it's a bit grindy, and runs take a long time. Like, they can take an hour, which for a mobile game is quite a long time.
Yeah, that's a big commitment for a mobile game.
Yeah, if you're if you're really taking your time with it and fighting in a lot of tournaments, it can take a while. Also, the other frustration, well, not frustration, I guess, like, it's just how it is, but the other, barrier to this is that it isn't only in Japanese.
Yeah, that's a big barrier.
Like, I had to install a third-party app store to even install it on my phone and the Android emulator that I'm using. Luckily, I have a screen translation tool so that I can like put a little box over some Japanese text and it'll translate it. The tool's not very good, but I've mostly gotten to the point where I know like what all the buttons do, and
it's enough to get the point across. Yeah,
and like I've started to like learn a little bit of like some kanji characters. Like, okay, this means volcano. I know what that means. So when that shows up, I know that's like my monster's affinity when it's fighting in the volcano region or whatever. Or like this, I now know the Japanese character for mid. Because there's like mid-range and mid-game like abilities, so like I'm like, okay, now I know. So that's been interesting. I don't necessarily think I'd recommend it because of the hurdles you have to jump across, but hey, if you like Monster Rancher.
Die hard Monster Hunter fan hurdles.
Monster Rancher fans, not Monster Hunter fans.
Or Monster Rancher.
Yeah.
Man, where's that crossover?
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Actually, I guess that's kind of Monster Hunter Stories. Yeah. Because it's a Monster Hunter RPG where it's kind of like Pokemon in that you catch and raise the monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the Monster Rancher game where you hunt them?
Oh God. No, the Monster Rancher spin-off games are card games and a weird pogo stick game. Don't ask.
No, I am explicitly going to ask.
I haven't actually played it. It's called Monster Rancher Hop About, and it might be like a puzzle game where you're like hopping across. I don't know. I haven't actually seen it at all either. But
you just know of its existence.
Yeah, that's whatever. You might see a video of a first reaction on the channel sometime. I don't know. I'll get around to it. One kind of unfortunate thing about this, though, is that even if this game does get released in English, I'm not convinced that my progress would be able to like go to the whatever English version they end up releasing. Because I've seen this before where mobile games that originally launch in Japan or China and get a global version later tend to be behind in content as content really gets created for the original version of the game. Like there's a stretch of maybe like 6 months to maybe even a year for that stuff to be incorporated into the global version of the game as they wait for it to get translated and whatever.
Yeah, so if it does, it's obviously not going to be up to date.
Yeah, and I really don't want to start again because this game is very grindy.
Or at least the odds of it being up to date are very low anyways.
The odds of it being released here are extremely small.
Yeah.
I would not expect it.
I'm even surprised that Monster Hunter 1... I keep doing it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that Monster Rancher 1 and 2 collection even got a release.
Yeah, it's... I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on over there. But so, other than that, the game that I've been spending a very large amount of time in would shock me. Like, I looked at my Steam count and I'm almost 50 hours into this game, which is like, didn't I start playing this like a week and a half ago? What's going on here? This doesn't seem right. Is Marvel's Midnight Suns. Because the final DLC for the game got released on like the 11th of this month. And I was waiting for all the DLC to be released, which I'm glad I did. For a reason I'll get into later. So I guess I'll start off by saying this is one of the strangest games I've played in a very long time. Even putting aside the fact that Doctor Strange is in it, this is still a very strange game. Which I'll get to that point why it's so strange in a little bit, but I'll start by saying like what the gameplay of the game actually is. It's a card PG. It's a card-based game, which surprised me. I didn't know that that's what this game was for a while after it released.
I thought it was a tactics game.
It is a tactics game, but it's card-based.
But there's a card mechanic too. Okay. Yeah,
so you draw a hand of like 5 cards or whatever every turn, and then you're able to play 3 cards per turn. And there's 3 different types of cards: attack cards, skill cards, and heroic cards. Attack and skill cards generate a resource called heroism, which you can use to do on the heroic cards, which are generally like stronger, bigger effects. Certain attacks will have this mechanic called quick, which refunds card plays if you use that card to KO an enemy. So you can end up spending more than 3 cards per turn if you're like managing your cards correctly. There's also some of the enemies are referred to as minions, which are just like one hit will kill them no matter what. Doesn't matter what card you use. As long as they take some amount of damage, they'll go away. So, you use your quick cards on those guys and you can really like cut away a lot of the enemies. One of the big focuses of the gameplay, though, is there's a focus on the environment. This is kind of like why it's not just like a card game, which this is what kind of makes it into a tactics game, where a lot of cards will reposition enemies, reposition your heroes. There's environmental pieces scattered around that you can use to like chuck a rock at somebody or pull down a telephone pole. various hazards. Like you can also like knock people off buildings and stuff like that, or into like giant pits, and that'll be an instant kill, though that's a percentage chance if that even works. And the environmental attacks that you can use, they don't actually use up card plays. They use up heroism, so that's another way for you to get more actions per turn using this environment stuff to knock people around. And like some of your attacks, literally like one of my favorite attacks for the main character is called Whip, where you just take an enemy and you just launch them in a direction, any direction you want, and so you can like there's an explosive barrel over there. I can chuck them into that and they'll explode and like damage enemies around there. I can throw them into just another enemy, that'll do damage, or I could throw them into one of my allies, which at the start your ally will take damage if you do that, but eventually you get an upgrade where if you throw an enemy into an ally, the ally won't take damage and the enemy will take bonus damage. So there's a lot of like emphasis on, positioning. So that's what makes this like a tactics game. This is what makes sense that Firaxis made this game, basically. You start off with 2 difficulty options, story mode and normal mode. There are 8 difficulty options total, which is a lot.
So you only start with a quarter of them.
Yeah, so the other ones unlock as you do well on missions, like incrementally, and each one just like makes enemies like have a little bit more health, a little bit more damage, and eventually there'll be additional enemy reinforcements and a limit on the number of times you can revive your characters during an encounter. Right now I'm playing on the second highest difficulty because the highest makes that limit 0, and and the game's getting pretty tough so far, so I'd have to play very, very like well to play on the highest difficulty, and also I think I'd have to play with a certain heroes that have like self-healing and stuff like that to actually succeed there. Playing on the harder difficulties gives you more currency for cosmetics and more experience for your heroes, but the hero experience doesn't really make sense because enemies scale to your level. So why do I care that I'm getting additional experience? That doesn't do anything.
Why level up then?
Yeah, it's just like you're just leveling up to see numbers go up, basically. So you don't unlock anything by raising your character's levels. There's one thing that unlocks, which is like side missions that you can send heroes on that are just like, they're unavailable for a day and they go do this mission. But those are very limited, and there has been like 0 issues with me having the required levels for those. So it doesn't really make sense. I haven't clocked with how enemies scale versus the heroes to see like, leveling up benefits one or the other. There's some games where enemies scale to your level where it's actually like beneficial for you to not level up because the enemies scale better than you.
Yeah, like I think Oblivion actually kind of does this, where if you don't level up, the enemies don't either.
Yeah. And also all your heroes auto level to be at least 3 or 4 levels below the main character's level. So you're not like, if you neglect playing certain heroes, like they're still going to be at a usable level for when you do missions, because when you do missions, there's at least 1 hero, sometimes 2, that are required for the mission. Like story missions sometimes like dictate your entire party, but there's also just general missions that you do where one hero is required, and then you bring on 2 more.
So who is the main character then? Is it just like a created character?
Yes. The main character is called the Hunter. They get around any like awkwardness with voice acting by saying that this is the character's given name. Like they don't have any other name than the Hunter. So, but
not to be confused with Kraven the Hunter.
No, they do make a reference to that. Spider-Man makes a reference to Kraven at some point. So yeah, it's a created character. You can choose their body type, not choose their gender, choose their body type, which is a nice little piece of inclusive language that they use there.
Yeah, you're seeing it a lot more now.
Yeah. So there's not necessarily a morality. Well, I guess it's a morality mechanic where the hunter can either be light or dark, and they get light points and dark points based on conversation options when they're talking to other heroes, as well as what kind of attacks they use in battle, where there'll be light attacks and dark attacks. Light attacks are mostly like support and healing. Dark attacks are like making enemies fight each other and using, like, getting penalties on the hunter to do additional damage and stuff like that. I'm trying to go full dark because I think it's more interesting, but it's been a challenge because I've really needed the healing abilities in my deck to not just lose.
Yeah,
so
that'll do it.
So I'd probably be full dark right now if I played on a lower difficulty level and didn't absolutely require the healing abilities, but I'm getting there. I'm like a little over halfway dark. And because the main characters, they have a lot more skill. They have a lot more cards available to them and are pretty much a generalist. So they're pretty good, I'd say. The personality is fine, I guess. It's another case where, it's funny, like, it's been a while. Actually, no, it's not been a while. Like, I don't remember the last game that I played that had, like, conversation options that were actually, like, fully voiced. Like, the Persona games, you're got a silent protagonist, right? Like, and I never played any of the Mass Effect games.
Yeah, and, like, not every scene in, like, the Persona games are voiced, only particular ones. Yeah,
so it's a sense where, like, when you're picking, like, very, like, disparate conversational options in something like Persona, like, it's a lot easier to just, like, let it slide. But with this, having the protagonist be fully voice acted, it's like, okay, sometimes they're, like, kind of nice or joking around. Sometimes when I'm picking, like, the dark options, they're just, like, super cold and mean and stuff like that. It's like my character's personality is all over the place, and it's a lot more noticeable because it's voiced.
Very schizophrenic.
Kinda, yeah.
The only thing, like, I can think of for a game with, like, dialogue choices that's fully voiced is, Mass Effect. Like, I don't know if there's been anything since the last Mass Effect. I'm sure there has been, but nothing that comes to mind.
Yeah. Oh, and you know how you were saying earlier that Link in Tears of the Kingdom was, like, stuck in the resurrection tube for, like, 100 years or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, the hunter in this game was stuck in the resurrection tube for 300 years, and then wakes up with some of her memories lost. God damn it! Goddamn video games, man. My favorite other characters to use in the game, because there's a fair amount of other characters to use. There's some of the Avengers, some of the X-Men, some of the actual, like, Midnight Suns for, like, that comic series. But my favorite characters used so far are Blade. Blade's really good because he's very generalist and kind of self-sufficient. He's got attacks that deal damage over time. He's got some multi-hit attacks and some quick attacks, so he can deal with, like, a fair amount of enemies at once, or just, like, hack away at one guy and stronger guy and make them take damage over time. And he's got a big lifesteal nuke, which is nice.
Is he modeled after Wesley Snipes?
Kinda, yeah. And they make some pretty fun references about, like, there's one conversation that you can have with him where he's talking about, like, if a movie was made about his life, and so there's a lot of good jokes there. There's a lot of good writing in this game. I'll say that much. Like, a lot of the characters have a lot of little jokes and quips and stuff like that. It feels very Marvel in that way.
I gotta ask, does Blade say, "Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill"?
There's no F-bombs in this game. Sorry. There's one character gets close to saying an F-bomb at one point. That's Iron Man, who's my other favorite character to use. Because he focuses on this mechanic in this game where you can redraw cards, so you can discard a card from your hand to draw a different card. But with a lot of Iron Man's abilities, when you redraw them, you don't draw a new card. You draw the same card, but with a slightly more powerful version. He's also got effects that draw additional Iron Man cards to your hand. And there's one attack that he has where he does like damage based on the number of Iron Man cards in your hand. So he kind of plays like a combo deck almost, where you're just like drawing more and more Iron Man cards and reusing them until you just got this critical mass, and then you just like fire a bunch of repulsor blasts at enemies. So that's been super useful. Some of the other characters are useful, but I haven't really figured out how to use them effectively yet. And some characters I just think are bad. I think Spider-Man is actually like really bad in this game because he focuses on the environmental attacks, but there's a limited number of those you can do in a round, because like once you use them once, they're gone. So like in longer like boss fights, like his usefulness drops off really quickly. And speaking of Spider-Man, this game has really awkward voice acting because there's a lot of characters that are good. Like Iron Man's voice actor does a really good Robert Downey Jr. impression. He's pretty close. But some characters, like, they don't... I think Doctor Strange doesn't sound quite right. And Spider-Man is actually the worst voice actor in the game. Not through any fault of the voice actor. But this is a case of voice actor poison where I know the voice actor, so like I can't hear anything other than other characters that voice actor has voiced. Because it's Yuri Lowenthal.
Oh, well, he's Spider-Man in the Insomniac Spider-Man games.
Yeah, well, I haven't played those.
I really like him as I can't.
I just hear Yosuke. I can't hear anything but Yosuke when he talks.
Yeah, no,
so
I hear it too, but at the same time, I do think he makes a good Spider-Man.
Yeah, like he it makes sense for him to be Spider-Man, but I just can't get past it, man. The game has the same kind of flow as XCOM, where it's very easy to just keep playing and lose track of time, because it's got a day-night cycle where during the day is when you upgrade your units and go on missions, and then at the nighttime there's various activities, like you can hang out with the various heroes. Some of the heroes have formed clubs. So my favorite so far has been the book club, where it's Captain Marvel, Captain America, Blade, and Wolverine talking about books.
What? Wolverine talking about books?
Like okay, this is where I'm gonna get into why I said stop. This is one of the strangest games I've played in a while, because like the tone of this game bounces really hard between end of the world, apocalyptic, horrible stuff, and kind of like chilling out with your hero buddies, and like irreverent kind of conversations and stuff like that. It's very odd. And going further from that, not just in like that, but there. So I wouldn't say there's an open world in this game, but there's an open area in this game. Like, you're not dealing with things through like a menu like XCOM. You're running around third person, this like kind of church abbey kind of place. The abbey itself is quite small, but that's where all the heroes are. But there's like the grounds of the place they're not huge, but there's a lot there for you to like wander around and explore and find stuff. There's a bunch of like collectibles in the environment and stuff like that. There's like respawning chests that respawn every so often for you to get resources and cosmetics out of. And there's like kind of investigation aspects to it where the game focuses a lot on like the occult. Has a lot to do with like, Salem and witches and stuff like that. Dark elder gods and stuff. So walk around getting like little flavor pieces and flavor collectibles throughout. And solving some very, very rudimentary puzzles. The problem with that is that like the game feels kind of bloated. It doesn't feel like it really needs too much of this stuff. If like like I'm like almost 50 hours in. And I just reached Act 2. I don't know how many acts there are in the game, but like just because there's so much to just like go and do in between combat encounters and progressing the story, you can't just like beeline the story. It feels like every story mission that you beat, you have to do like a general mission before you can go back to the story. So like it's just been going like longer than I would have liked. I'm not entirely happy that I'm spending this much time with the game because I feel like there's a lot of busy work around it. It reminds me a lot of Fire Emblem Three Houses that way. Where there's just like too much to do in between like the core game of it. And if it was like more just like the interacting with the heroes part, I'd be fine with that. But like I'm the kind of person who really doesn't like it when they feel like they are missing stuff in games. So like, oh, you know, I see there's, you know, some chests that respawn. I'm gonna go over there and grab those. And I will say this: the fast travel in the game is actually instant, which is nice. It kicks up the fans on my PC really loud, but it is instant.
Yeah, actually, speaking of fans, I took my headphones off the other day, and I'm like, what's making that noise? And then it's like, oh, it's the Switch.
Yep. This portable system, it can get loud if it wants to.
Yeah. And Tears of the Kingdom, that's putting the fan into overdrive at points.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I don't know if it helps that it's a launch Switch as well.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing I want to talk about with this is the DLC. So there's 4 DLC characters. There's Deadpool, Venom, Storm, and Morbius, who I am so...
Well, 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Yeah, I'm so curious as to like when the design doc for the DLC was like finalized for this game, and how much the release of the Sony Pictures masterpiece Morbius influenced that. Because like Morbius is... Because the DLC, it revolves around a large side story involving vampires. So it makes sense for Morbius to be there, but like chicken and egg situation, which came first? Did this storyline come first? And it's just a coincidence that the movie came out or whatever? Like, what happened here? I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for those meetings.
Yeah. Well, I think also Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 had a Morbius-focused DLC, and I think that might have predated the movie, but the movie was also on the horizon. So...
Yeah, the DLC characters, they tie into this side story, but they did actually do a really nice thing where the DLC characters have contextual voice lines for the story beats in the main story, which is really nice. So it doesn't feel like they're just like slapped on kind of after the fact. They actually feel like they sort of belong there despite not being in any of the main story cutscenes. But, you know, what are you going to do about that, really?
Yeah.
And also, Storm rules. Storm is really fun to use. Her abilities rely on, if you have them in your hand for a full turn, they get more powerful. So you're kind of like, okay, I got, you know, a couple Storm cards I'm just going to hold on to for now and try and get the job done with my other characters so that next turn I can unleash more powerful abilities. So there's a lot of interesting mechanics that they've put into play here, which is nice. Like this, the gigantic rise over the last few years of digital card games have given a lot of interesting mechanics related to that. Because like something like that, you can't do that in a physical card game. You can't say, "Oh, I have held on to this piece of hidden information for 2 turns, as far as you know." So it's just this powerful. Like, you just can't do that in a physical card game.
Yeah,
with hidden
like
information.
unless you have like an official standing behind each player the entire match.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting interaction in Magic, where you actually to use the cards you need to call a judge. because it is like that kind of effect where it uses two old cards where they clearly weren't thinking about this as much. Where one card is you like draw you draw additional cards during your draw step or whatever, and then you put some number of cards that you've drawn this turn specifically back on top of your deck, or you pay life to keep them. But there's a card that you can use to just like, draw 3 cards and put 2 on top of your deck. If you play that during your upkeep, now just like, who knows which cards you drew, which cards you put back, and then which cards you drew again.
Yeah.
It just gets like a ridiculously bad hidden information game where like you need somebody else to verify, okay, this person is playing this legitimately. And both of those cards are quite powerful, so like in the older formats, that interaction might actually come up. So I'm going to keep playing this game. I'm going to finish it at this point, but I have no idea when that'll be. I have no idea when it'll be done. And I know there's a couple characters. There's at least 2. No, not at least. I know there's 2 characters I haven't gotten yet because I got spoiled because I bought the version that came with all the DLC. It also came with additional costumes for some of the characters.
And you got some costumes for characters you don't have yet.
Exactly. So it's like, oh, okay. So this character that is an enemy right now, I'm getting them later. Great. Good to know.
Yeah, and yeah, who knows how close you are to the end when, as you said, you only just got to Act 2.
Yeah, and it seems like every story mission you're not actually accomplishing anything. Like you're not actually getting any headway against the main villain. It's like, oh, you go into the story mission and you try to, complete this objective, but oh no, it's a trap, and the enemy is more powerful now than they were when they started. It's like, okay, well, eventually that balance is going to tip, right? I guess that's when I start on recruiting the other 2 characters I don't have yet. I don't know, but I'd say I'd recommend it I'd recommend it for sure if you're into superhero games. I think the game does a really good job if you keep it on maybe some of the earlier difficulties of presenting a really nice set of gameplay rules, and the way things interact is quite it makes a lot of sense. It's nothing's like really like esoteric and complicated. So, I'd say if you're into superheroes, I'd give it a shot. If you're into card-based role-playing games, like it's a pretty good one of those. But if you're not into the superheroes at all, I'd say give it a pass because a large part of the game is like interacting with these heroes and just seeing a bunch of cutscenes and stuff like that. If you want a more like mechanically streamlined game, play something else.
Yeah, one thing I saw yesterday, you put like the biggest brain opening move in a chess game between Tony Stark and Doctor Strange, and that was... And
it was the double bong cloud.
Yeah.
The best opening in chess. Yeah, so there's, little things like that in the background and stuff that are quite funny. Like, this was a game with a budget, I'll say that much, which might be why it feels so bloated, but they put a lot of attention to detail. Except for facial hair. I was really surprised. I don't know why hair, like facial hair in particular, still looks terrible in video games.
Yeah, like it can look good, but a lot of the time it just looks like it's just been placed on there.
Yeah, they look like Tony Stark looks like he's wearing a fake mustache in this game, but his like head hair looks fine. I don't understand why one is so easy but the other is so difficult. I wouldn't say top of head hair is easy, but it's gotten to the point where hair looks pretty good in video games now. Like people can actually have long hair and it look fine instead of either be just like a solid brick or a physics nightmare.
Yeah, like it doesn't look like you're wearing a Lego hairpiece.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Okay, so is that all we played?
I believe so.
Okay.
Now something I'm going to be playing, you might be playing. Street Fighter 6.
Mm-hmm.
This is old news at this point, but there's a couple things I want to go over. They confirmed that you can play online with your custom character,
Okay.
but only against other people's custom characters.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is the proportion, like, because the character creator in this is absolutely nutty, but your character's proportions actually have an effect on the moves in your hitboxes.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
So it's not like Soul Calibur where you're just making a character and they've got all the same hitboxes as the character whose moveset you chose.
Mm-hmm.
But it also allows you to mix and match the moves of the actual characters. So, like, for example, I saw there's the new character Kimberly. She has a teleport, I believe, and so you can have your character do the teleport into like Geef's SPD.
Oh no.
So there's going to be some crazy stuff there. Like even just creating like a cosplay character that just like looks like a character, has all their moves, but then you just have like one hidden thing in there they won't expect.
Yeah. Is Dulcim in the game?
Yes.
Oh my god. The horrors that will show up when just created characters using elastic limbs. Ooh, I hope they have some very good model like deformation tech to make that work.
I am expecting
model stretching
to see a good amount of Monkey D. Luffy's.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. One of the few games where you can probably do that legitimately.
Yep. They also confirmed all 4 characters in Season 1.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they might as well have, because, like, over a year ago at this point, there was that leak that leaked the entire roster and the first season.
I mean, yeah. Street Fighter and roster leaks are or old hat at this point.
Yeah. So you've got Rashid coming in summer, Aki in the fall, who's a new character, Ed in the winter, and Akuma in spring next year.
Yeah, gotta get Akuma in there.
But you'll have to wait for him.
Yeah, he's too busy bowling and Tekken.
They've also got character battle damage in the game, which you can actually turn off if you don't want to see your character getting damaged at the end.
Okay, that's good.
And there's even, like, you've got all these wacky game modes you can play, but there's also even you can do KOF style team battles.
Yeah, that's interesting that they put in there. That's kind of cool.
And then I guess the last big thing, so after the first beta, people cracked it.
Yeah.
So there were people who were who continued to practice, continue playing, but they ended up putting out a statement, and they didn't make it retroactive. They just said anyone shown or caught playing the cracked beta from this point forward will be ineligible for the Capcom Pro Tour and Street Fighter League seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Which basically means you're not eligible for the million.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it for Street Fighter 6. That's less than a week away at this point, at the time of this recording.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to hopping on that Thursday night when it unlocks on Steam.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get together that weekend to do June's mediocre monthlies in Street Fighter for sure.
May have to be a 2-parter.
Perhaps, yeah.
We might have to do an episode dedicated just to the wacky game modes.
Yeah.
Check some of those out. But the only other thing I wanted to talk about here is this. It's a bit of a weird piece of gaming news. If you have an IKEA computer chair, it might be affecting your setup.
I have an IKEA, well, office chair.
Does it have a mesh back?
Yes.
Okay, so...
Are you about to tell me that the mesh back is bad? Because the mesh back is the only thing preventing horrible back sweats during the summer we're going to be going into.
Is it the IKEA Marcus? You know what? Your chair, from what I can see, looks like the one in the picture. So there have been reports of when some people stand up or sit down from this chair, their monitor goes blank.
Okay, well I haven't had that problem, but
so the person who was having this issue even swapped out their chair to something else and stopped having the problem. And then when they switched back, it continued. It seems to be a problem with static buildup. So the person who was reporting on this ended up having to ground their chair.
That's ridiculous. I will confirm that I do have the IKEA Marcus. I have it on top of a. If it's static, then I'm really like doing badly because I have it on top of a rug, so I can move it around without it being too loud.
But yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's just a weird little piece of news I wanted to bring up.
All right, so can we use the IKEA Marcus to recreate the 1 in a billion, like weird space radiation, whatever that thing was for the Super Mario speedrun? The 64 speedrun.
Just the random bit flip.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, no, it seems to be just making monitors go blank temporarily when you sometimes sit down or stand up from the chair.
Okay.
It's a weird problem. And I'm getting this article from Tom's Hardware.
Okay, that's all right. That's
so
it's not a hard drive article, which is what I'd expect it to be. Given that, Jesus.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the podcast for this time iteration, considering we don't put these out regularly. If you enjoyed us talking about games, be sure to leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube, or send us an email at 3levelsdeep@outlook.com. And we can, discuss, user feedback and user opinions on the air, if we ever get any. And also, whether you're on the YouTube channel or not, check out what we've been putting out, because as we mentioned, we've been putting out a Let's Play of Cursed Halo again, and that's been a treat. For sure.
And we recently had our mediocre monthly of King of Fighters 2002 Unlimited match go up.
That was a lot of characters that we played there. A
lot of Kyos.
Yeah. And we've got a couple tier lists in the bank. I'm not going to spoil here, but so you're just going to have to subscribe to the YouTube channel and see when they show up. One of them is, I'm looking at something in Matt's background right now that it relates to.
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah. Check us out and have yourself a safe and sane summer.
Keep cool.